Hello, and welcome to Black Cat Archives. I'm Heather, and this is my channel where I review all things horror, mystery, thriller, suspense, and more. Today we're going to take a dive into Zach Cregger's latest horror movie, Weapons. All right, so like many of you, I really enjoyed Zach Cregger's Barbarian from last year. I also loved the fact that he was from the sketch comedy show The Whitest Kids You Know back in like the mid to late 2000s. So I thought it was an interesting career shift for him to be getting into horror. But Barbarian was one of my favorite films from, I think it was last year, maybe the year before. I'll put the correct year down here below. But either way, it was a horror movie that really resonated with me. I liked how it was kind of giving some social commentary, but it wasn't like spoon feeding it, or it didn't feel like inauthentic. I loved the twist. I loved all of that. I loved the creepy atmosphere and just what I felt to be a very original story. Weapons is his movie for this year. It was released August 8th, 2025. It stars Julia Garner, Josh Brolin, Benedict Wong has a role in it. And of course, you can't forget or talk about Weapons without forgetting Amy Madigan, who, yes, that is Amy Madigan, who you might have last seen in Uncle Buck as his girlfriend. Yeah, that Uncle Buck. I looked at IMDb before I went to go see the movie. I saw her in the cast and I was like, how strange. I thought she might be playing, I don't know, like somebody's mom or something like that. And boy, I sure got a surprise when I saw her on screen. Now, I won't say anything more about that because this is our spoiler-free portion of the video. So yeah, just to let you know, this first little bit, I'm gonna just be kind of speaking about the film generally and my thoughts generally about it. And then I will warn you before I get into a little more spoilery territory. But yeah, Amy Madigan, not to give away any spoilers, but she certainly gave an iconic horror performance in Weapons that I was absolutely thrilled with. So if you've seen any of the marketing materials for Weapons, which includes like the poster and the trailer and sort of like Longlegs and Smile, there's been some kind of online marketing that has gone along with Weapons, which in this case, it's a website. I believe it's just called like Mayborn Missing, what's the name? The name of the town Missing, Mayborn Missing. I'll put the website link down here so you can take a look at it. But it's a website made to look as though it might be real, like a real website from the early 2000s or something like that. And it's detailing how these children went missing and they never came back, and kind of this conspiracy and questions about what actually happened, why all these kids went missing. And that is the premise of the movie, is the 17 kids from the same class at school all go missing except for one in the class, and then the teacher, of course. The whole movie you're trying to figure out, along with the other characters, why they went missing and how they went missing. So the movie has a super unsettling atmospheric kind of quality to it, a bit like Barbarian in that way, where you can kind of feel the dread and suspense of the characters and the atmosphere in the movie. But it definitely has more of a dark comedic air about it than like Barbarian did, for instance. So even though I definitely found Barbarian to have some darkly comedic moments to it, overall I felt I thought Barbarian was really quite a scary movie. But with Weapons, I feel as though it's a bit more dark comedy and definitely has some unsettling, spooky kind of elements to it for sure, which we'll get into more later in like the spoiler section. But yeah, overall, I didn't find it to be as scary as Barbarian or a really deeply scary movie. Now, that's not to say there weren't certainly some moments that were very scary, and also just kind of the overarching story is scary because we're talking about like missing children, and once we get into the spoiler section, I'll divulge a little bit more. But yeah, so that mystery in and of itself is of course very scary, but it's not like a super scary movie, or at least it wasn't for me. I thought, like I just said, Amy Madigan's performance was absolutely amazing and just iconic. Like I definitely want to be her for Halloween at some point. And Julia Garner gave a great performance as the teacher of the classroom who all the students went missing from. And Josh Brolin was great as this concerned dad. who's just completely become obsessed with the fact that his son is missing, understandably so. But yeah, his performance was great. And Benedict Wong plays the principal of the school where all the kids went missing, kind of trying to keep everything together. All the performances were really great. They really towed the line well between being serious and having that collective sense of dread, but also able to embrace the like moments of levity or lightness that kind of made it more funny, if that makes any sense. So yeah, I really enjoyed the performances, the atmosphere. I thought the story itself was, although if you really distill it down, it's kind of a simple premise, even once the mystery is resolved. I thought it was very creatively told and effectively told. I really enjoyed the structure of it, and I'll get into that more during the spoiler section. But I thought it was a well-written script, an effective storytelling method that was not entirely unique, but certainly not your normal horror movie structure per se. It let the story and the mystery develop and unfold, almost like leaving breadcrumbs for you as you went along the story. The story itself almost had like a Hansel and Gretel vibe to it. If you really distill it down, it was sort of almost a fairy tale at its core. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed it. It was definitely one of my favorite horror movies I've seen this year in the theater. I would definitely recommend it, especially if you're a fan of Barbarian, or if you want to see Amy Madigan just absolutely kill it and become a horror icon. You can't miss that for sure. It was nice to see Julia Garner again, having seen her earlier this year in Wolfman. And it's certainly worth your time. I know I'm a little late posting this video. It's been out for several weeks at this point, but definitely worth checking out. Again, it's more of a darkly comedic, creepy, unsettling sort of horror movie, not like a terrifying horror movie. There's a couple of jump scares like that here and there, but it's not really like super scary. And of course, like I said, the story being about missing children and all that gave it a very unnerving quality, and the grief that the parents and the teacher are experiencing all sort of gives you that anxious kind of dread feeling. The overarching theme of the dark humor throughout kept it from being too terribly scary, because you sort of take it in stride. It's like that sense of irony or jaded sarcasm. Most horror movies now in the 2020s, kind of like since 2020 onward, and maybe I'll do another video about this in a little more depth, but it feels like since COVID, horror movies have been kind of contaminated by that dark humor element, that self-awareness and jadedness that keeps it from being genuinely terrifying, if that makes sense. Most movies aren't trying to just be scary movies. They're trying to be like, yeah, we know what we're doing. Like, do you guys get it kind of a thing? But like, it's like the cool kids, you know? It's like so many horror movies do that now. And I like it when it's well done, but I also miss just kind of like freaking scary movies, you know, like terrifying, genuinely scary movies that make it hard for me to sleep or that keep my mind turning, you know, things like that. Yeah, overall, I did really enjoy it, and check it out if you're into that kind of a thing. And now here's the part where I will warn you that we're gonna go into some spoilers. So here's your warning, spoilers are incoming. All right, so yes, the premise is that at 2:17 in the morning, all these kids go missing from their homes. They're caught on Ring video cameras and surveillance cameras throughout the town. So it's divided into 6 parts, and the story is told using the Rashomon effect. So we have 6 separate segments that are each surrounding a character. So the first segment is Justine, who is the teacher, played by Julia Garner. The second segment is Archer, who's played by Josh Brolin, who's the dad of one of the missing kids. The third segment is Paul, who is the cop who is in a relationship with Justine, or cheating on his wife, or girlfriend, or whatever she is, as we learn. Then we have James, who is a junkie who gets caught up in the drama of what happened with these kids. And then we have Marcus, who is played by Benedict Wong, the principal of the school, and him trying to keep everything together and ultimately succumbing to a sad and one of the most gory moments of the movie. Then we have Alex is the 6th part. Now, Alex is the child that did not go missing from the class. You know, the cops interview him. The parents think, you know, that he's got something to do with it and all this. And anyway, yeah, so he's the one kid in the class that didn't go missing. So we're told the story in like pieces, right? So it's like Justine, we learn her part of the story. Then we learn Archer's part. And it's like one kind of picks up after the other leaves off. And I thought it was a pretty effective way to kind of learn about the characters themselves, if they're unreliable narrators or an event that they are describing from their point of view. Later, we learn a little bit more about it from a different character and how their perceptions are colored. So it's kind of a commentary on when an event occurs like this in a small town, which could be a metaphor for, you know, any kind of little society, basically, how different people are trying to spin things to get what they want, right? So yeah, it's pretty effectively done. I liked that. And I also read that Gladys, who is Amy Madigan's character, the villain of the story, right? And we'll get to that in a minute, but she actually had her own segment. They actually cut it from the film, or I don't know if they actually shot it or not. But either way, they're now working on a full feature film prequel about Gladys. So I'm super excited about that. I think that's going to be awesome. So anyway, yeah, and the movie starts with this voiceover narration of one of the little kids from the town. And she's telling the story almost like it's a campfire tale. She's like, yeah, this happened in my town when 17 kids went missing, all at 2:17 a.m. and they never came back. And the news says it went this way, but it really went this way. So it's kind of like that, like creepypasta, like Reddit thread type or campfire type story or fairy tale, that sort of oral tradition, kind of trying to capture you into the story using that voiceover narration. And it's framed, so the beginning and the end of the film both use that voiceover narration. I kind of just thought it was a little bit cheesy, or I didn't really understand why they were doing it that way at first. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, oh, okay, it's trying to like draw you in. And there were these allusions kind of throughout the movie to what was going on. So like, for instance, Julia Garner's a biology teacher. On her whiteboard in her class, like they're learning about parasites, right? By the end of the movie, what we discover, or I guess the third act, middle of the second act, somewhere in there, it starts to become clear. Gladys is Alex's aunt who comes in from out of town to stay with his parents because she's so sick, right? But as it turns out, she's a witch who uses black magic and she's trying to stay alive. And the way that she stays alive is basically by draining the lives of people that she casts spells upon, making them almost vegetable-like and also putting them under her control. And when she does this, she's regaining her life force. But she presents as this like very eccentric sort of old lady, you know, and she's wearing like her tracksuit and all this kind of stuff. When they want to do a welfare check on Alex, you know, she puts on this whole little act. It's like she's doing it on purpose. Now, I thought I had kind of two schools of thought about it because she acts so eccentric and so bizarre. At first, I'm like, oh, she's just like putting on this persona to try to like freak people out. So they're like, okay, I guess he's okay, but like, I just want to get away from her. But like, I don't need to look into this anymore because we've learned everything we need to know from her. She wears like this Joker-esque almost makeup, like or a clown, you know, like she's just got these huge overlined like red lips and bright green eyeshadow, and she just looks kind of crazy, you know? So it's like giving you that crazy old lady vibe. So it's like, oh, maybe if I act like this, they won't want to talk to me anymore and they'll put their attention elsewhere. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, I think she might just actually be that way. And she's like putting on that persona because she thinks that's what she needs to do to get people to think everything's okay. So rather than being like, I'm going to be as weird as I possibly can, so but also at the same time let them know that things are okay, and so that way they'll just leave me alone. Instead, it's like she's like, oh, I better do my best, put on my makeup and blah blah blah. So anyway, it could be one or the other, maybe neither, who's to say. I really enjoyed her character a lot. She was so creepy, so well done when she would go into people's homes because, you know, like traditional kind of black magic sort of thing. She has to get an item from the person, and then she wraps it around these sticks and uses her own blood and all this creepy black magic stuff to gain control over these people. And then, like I said, she sort of just she is like a parasite and depletes them of their energy source so that she can regain her energy and her power and also use them as weapons. So she weaponizes these people. What we discover throughout the movie is she's able to use this black magic to cause them to just run and like zombie. They're like weaponized zombies where they can just like run after and barrel into people and just keep clawing and gnawing and beating at them until they die. And they won't stop, even to their own detriment, until their purpose is fulfilled, right? So that's where I think the weapons title comes from. While she's acting as a parasite, she weaponizes these people and uses them to her benefit. After she moves into the house, she immediately takes over Alex's parents. They're like just these stationary zombies at this point that just sit and do nothing. And Alex is like, what's wrong with my parents? She's like, oh, it's fine, da, 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 da. She also shows Alex that she can get them to harm themselves. Based on her command, they just start stabbing themselves in the face with forks. And so she makes Alex bear witness to that and then uses that to wield power over him. So she's basically like, I can make your parents hurt themselves whenever I want. So you need to do what I say. So she asks him to get an item from each of the kids at his school. And when they all go to recess, he goes to like their little storage cubbies they have, and he takes each one of their name tags off, which they had each colored and written their name themselves. So he brings those home. Then she's able to do her spell all in one night. And she's up until 2:17 in the morning. And right as the clock hits 2:17, that is the moment when all the kids get out of their beds and run, like they are all with their arms out to the side. And when I first saw that, I was like, they look like marionettes, like they're like these little puppets just running, you know? And so they run all the way to the house. She keeps them down in the basement where I think she's like feeding off of them. So I'd read something where somebody was like, what does she even do? She's not even using them. I'm like, no, I think she's like feeding off of them, because you'll notice over time, like she's starting to grow more hair, like, cause you know, she wears like this red bob wig with like micro bangs. And then when she's at home, she takes it off and she's just like bald. But what I noticed, like between the beginning, before she gets the kids and the end, she's starting to grow some of her hair back. Like before it was like a couple stringy little strands. And then by the end, she's got like more of her natural hair. So I think she is sucking energy from them. At the end of the movie, when they're released from their spell, the voiceover of the little girls, like the kids went home and some of them have even started to talk now. But like Alex's parents, for instance, had to go to some kind of institution. Like they were never the same again. They were just brain dead after being under Gladys's spell for so long. But the kids, some of them started to begin to be able to talk again, is like the way the movie, I think, literally ends. The image is like Josh Brolin carrying his kid over his shoulder and the little girl doing the voiceover narration. I'm pretty sure that's the very last thing she says. Like, some of them even began to talk last year. Then it's like cut to black. So she's suckling power off them all the time. And she is so old and depleted herself. That's why she's got to have all these kids to suckle off of and regain her youth and her life force. So I don't want to spend too much time talking about the actual plot, but Julia Garner, who plays the teacher, and then Josh Brolin, who plays the dad, they kind of team up. At first, they're at odds with each other. And then they sort of team up and start to work together to solve the mystery. And that leads them to Alex's house, where they discover all the kids in the basement. And then while that's going on, Alex himself, he breaks a rule that Gladys laid down and crosses this salt threshold. And when he does that, his parents start to go nuts trying to kill him. And there's even like kind of a here's Johnny moment with his mom stabbing through the door and all this stuff, which I love, those kind of callbacks, you know, to classic horror movies like The Shining. But he uses the black magic against Gladys, and he snaps the twig, and when he does that, he has weaponized the kids against her, which results in one of the most awesome chase scenes where the kids are just mercilessly chasing down Gladys as she's like literally running through houses. The kids are running through, breaking windows. They tackle her and they literally rip her apart. So like I said, there's a couple jump scares and there's a couple really gory moments that are super gnarly. But yeah, that was an awesome ending. Seeing her get her just desserts, as it were. It's almost Pied Piper-esque in a way. And like I said at the beginning of the video, it sort of reminds me of like a Hansel and Gretel story. She's like this witch that's drawing these kids in. Overall, I think it's a really cool examination of how people respond to this type of situation, this type of horrible accident or unexplained event, and how it affects the town, how it affects people in the town, all this kind of a thing. And then the kids themselves are almost like an afterthought in the movie. Like, it's about finding the kids, but at the end of the day, it's more about all the people that are affected by the disappearance of the kids rather than the kids themselves. So I thought it was a really well-written script. I thought it was a really great, unsettling, sort of creepy movie. And I did really find the dark humor to be super effective. And I absolutely loved Amy Madigan in this. I can't voice that enough. She was just amazing and awesome and hilarious. I think I liked this on par with Barbarian, just in a different way. So yeah, keep it up, Zach Cregger. I think that's all I've got to say on this one. Let me know what you thought in the comments below so we can keep the discussion going. I really would love to hear your thoughts on this one, or anything you thought I got right or wrong. Let me know. Love to keep talking about it. So that's all for now. Thanks for watching the Black Cat Archives, and we'll see you next time here. That's it. Goodbye.